What you're about to hear isn't folklore. It's the reason I can't sleep without the lights on. They said the house was empty, but something in there was waiting for me. When I first saw the house, it was beautiful in that quiet, lonely way only forgotten places can be. The white paint had faded to a soft cream, the porch railings slightly crooked, and the woods behind it stretched for miles. The realtor kept saying it just needed a little love. I didn't tell her I was already running out of that. I had just left New York. A divorce that tore more than papers. A job that had eaten the last of my faith in people. I wanted silence. And this place, this small town in northern Maine, offered exactly that. A lake a few miles away, neighbors far enough that I could forget they existed. I signed the papers the same day. The first few nights were everything I'd hoped for. The air was colder than the city, but tasted clean. Pine and earth and rain. I'd sit on the porch, drink coffee, and watch the mist rise from the woods. At night, the sound of crickets folded the dark into something almost tender. But on the fifth night, the silence changed. It wasn't louder. It was emptier, like something had started listening. I noticed it while brushing my teeth. The faint feeling of being watched, not from the mirror, not from the window, just behind me. When I turned, there was nothing. Only the dim hallway and that smell again, wet soil like the woods after rain. I told myself I was tired. The next morning, the sound started. Soft at first, a faint scratching behind the bedroom wall. Probably mice, I thought. But when I pressed my ear to it, the scratching stopped. That night, I dreamed of footsteps pacing above my bed, slow. Deliberate steps that never changed their rhythm. When I woke, the ceiling was still, but the air smelled of iron and rot. I remember whispering into the dark, "You're not real. I don't believe in you." The silence that followed wasn't relief. It was listening. By the second week, things began to move. Small things, keys on the counter, my coffee mug placed neatly in the sink when I hadn't left my chair. I tried to rationalize it. People do that when they're alone too long. They make ghosts out of loneliness. But then came the knocking. Every night around 3 a.m., 3 knocks, slow, heavy, on the back door. Always the same rhythm, always 3. The first night I opened it, flashlight trembling in my hand. The woods were silent, the mist clinging low to the ground, thick and heavy, swallowing the beam of my light. Nothing moved. But when I turned to go back inside, I saw it, a handprint on the glass. Too large, too dark. The next morning, it was gone. I told myself it must have been dirt or moisture, anything but what I'd felt, a faint pulse beneath the glass when I touched it. Days passed. The air inside the house grew heavier, as though the rooms themselves were breathing slower. The lights began to flicker, not in a random way, but in rhythm, like Morse code. Then, one evening, as I sat reading, the air shifted. The temperature dropped fast, cold rushing up from the floor, crawling over my skin like ice water. The lamps went out at once, and in the dark, from somewhere deep in the hallway, came a sound I can still hear when the nights are too quiet. A low, wet whisper that said, "Found you?" My breath froze. I didn't move. The whisper came again, closer now, right beside the doorway. "You shouldn't have come here." And then nothing. Just silence. The lamps flickered back to life. The clock read 3:03 a.m. I tried to convince myself I'd dreamed it. But dreams don't leave marks. The next morning, I found 3 deep scratches down the hallway wall, as though something had dragged its claws through plaster and paint. And so, as the morning light crept through the curtains, I realized that the house was not empty anymore. Something had chosen me. The first sign of possession isn't sound. It's attention. And by then, I already had its full attention. And so, as the wind sighed through the trees, my story began quietly, one breath at a time. If you're still listening, keep your light low and your heartbeat steady. I'm not alone in telling this story anymore. You're part of it now. Stay with me. The real haunting hasn't even begun. The next few days felt like living inside someone else's dream, one that refused to end. Every time I walked through the house, I felt the air thicken as though it had weight. The smell of iron lingered longer. The shadows stretched wider. I kept telling myself that the mind can create anything when it's afraid. But deep down, I knew this wasn't my imagination. It was watching, learning. I began sleeping downstairs, close to the front door. Somehow, Knowing the exit was near made it easier to breathe, but the noises followed. The soft scrape of something dragging across the floorboards, the faint click of nails on wood, and sometimes, just before I drifted into sleep, the whisper, never clear, never loud, just enough to make my heart stutter. On the 9th night, I woke to the sound of running water. The bathroom faucet was on, full stream. When I reached it, the mirror was fogged, though the air was cold. And through that thin film of condensation, I saw what froze me. Finger marks. 5 of them, pressed hard into the glass from the inside. I left the light on that night, but the brightness only made the darkness beyond the door feel deeper. Around 2 a.m., something began tapping on the window. Gentle at first, almost curious. I forced myself to look. What I saw wasn't a face. It was the reflection of one, pale, warped, hovering just behind the glass, staring back. My own reflection looked terrified, but behind it, the shadow moved. I backed away slowly. The tapping stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then came a long, drawn-out breath from the hallway, like someone inhaling through broken lungs. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs refused. The sound of breathing grew louder, closer. When I finally found the strength to turn, the hallway was empty. Yet I could feel eyes fixed on me from the end of it, cold, patient, unblinking. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my back to the wall, clutching the phone. But the screen stayed dark. No signal, no connection. Outside, the wind had stopped. The world felt suspended. The next morning, I noticed something new, faint ash-like residue near the front door. It wasn't dust, it smelled of sulfur. When I brushed it aside, the wood beneath was warm, almost as if someone or something had been standing there. Later that evening, I decided to set up my old camcorder. I placed it facing the hallway, half hoping it would catch something, half praying it wouldn't. The red recording light glowed, faintly as I whispered to the empty air, "If you're real, I just want to see you." Nothing happened that night, or so I thought. When I played the recording the next morning, the screen stayed black for the first hour. Then faintly the static shifted. At 3:03 a.m., the camera picked up movement, something pale emerging from the dark end of the hallway, crawling slowly on all fours. Its head twisted toward the lens, too fast, too unnatural. And then the face came into view, hollow eyes, mouth open, smiling wider than humanly possible. The camera cut off. I stared at the frozen image for what felt like forever. My body was shaking, but not from fear, from realization. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't memory. It was something older, hungrier. That afternoon, I packed my things. I was ready to leave the house behind, no matter what I'd lose. But when I opened the door, there were footprints on the porch, wet, black, and leading not away from the house, but into it. And so, as the evening light faded into gray, I understood what it wanted. Leaving wouldn't end this, because once a demon chooses you, it doesn't haunt a house. It haunts your shadow. The nights that followed blurred together. Every sound, every flicker of movement made me flinch. I kept the lights on, every single one. But darkness found its way back in small ways, in reflections, in whispers in my dreams, and still that whisper returned, softer now, almost kind. "You can't run. You brought me here." I don't remember falling asleep that night, only waking up to find my bedroom door wide open. If you're still here, still listening, remember, this is only where it began to understand me. The next part is when it decided to show me what it truly was. And so, as the night deepened, my story moved quietly forward. For days, I avoided looking into mirrors. It wasn't superstition, it was instinct. Every time my reflection moved just a heartbeat too late, I felt that slow rot of dread bloom in my chest. The thing had learned my rhythms. It mimicked them, breathed with me, waited. I stopped recording, stopped trying to prove anything. Proof didn't matter anymore. What I wanted was silence, the kind that could wrap around me like a blanket and make me forget the weight pressing against my thoughts. But silence never lasted long in that house. The first time it said my name, I was in the kitchen, washing dishes. The sun had barely set, the last light still painting the edges of the window gold. Then I heard it, my name, spoken softly from the hallway. Not shouted, not whispered, just said, perfectly calm, the way someone familiar might call to you when you've dropped something. I froze, the plate slipping under the water. It said it again, quieter this time. My name, drawn out, deliberate. I wanted to believe it was a neighbor, maybe someone at the door. But when I turned, the hallway was darker than it should have been. The light from the window stopped right at the threshold, as though afraid to step further. Something inside me knew. If I answered, it would come closer. So I didn't. I kept my eyes on the floor and said nothing. After a long pause, I heard it laugh, a low, slow sound, like air being pulled through teeth. Then the sound faded upward toward the attic. I didn't go upstairs for 3 days. When I finally did, the air felt wrong, thicker, colder. Dust floated in the faint beam of light spilling through the small attic window. Everything was still. Then I noticed the writing. On the far wall, faintly carved into the wood, "I hear you too." I left the attic door open that night, thinking maybe light or sound would stop it. But as the clock hit 3, a faint knocking began above the ceiling, steady, patient, deliberate. The same 3 knocks as before, but this time they didn't stop. They followed the rhythm of my breath. The next morning, I found claw marks around the attic door, small and curved, like something had been scratching from the inside out. That evening, I drove into town for the first time in weeks. I needed air, people, anything that didn't smell of sulfur and dust. At the diner, I told the waitress, a woman maybe in her 50s, that I'd moved into the old Miller place. She froze mid-step. "You shouldn't be staying there," she said quietly. "That house doesn't like to let people leave." She told me about the family who'd lived there before me. A father, a mother, and their teenage son. The boy had gone missing first. The parents searched for days before the father claimed he heard their son calling from the walls. They found him in the attic, sitting against the far wall, eyes open, mouth torn into a smile. There were no signs of struggle. Just one word scratched beside him: "Stay." I left before finishing my meal. Driving back, the road seemed longer, the trees darker. When the house came into view, every light inside was already on. I hadn't left them that way. Through the front window, I could see movement, someone walking slowly through the hallway. I should have driven away. I should have called someone. But fear makes strange choices for you. I went inside. The air was still. The lights hummed softly. Nothing moved. Then, from behind me, the sound came again, my name. This time closer, clearer, almost gentle. I turned, and there it was. Standing at the end of the hallway, its shape nearly human, its skin pale and stretched too thin, eyes dark as oil. It tilted its head, and in my own voice it said, "You called me." My breath hitched. I stepped back, but my body didn't feel like my own anymore. Every movement was slow, heavy, as if I were underwater. The thing stepped forward, one slow stride at a time, until the light caught its face, and I realized it wasn't smiling anymore. It looked disappointed. "I chose you," it said softly. "Don't leave me again." Then the lights went out. I don't know how long I stood there in the dark. When I woke, I was lying on the floor, the morning sun filtering through the curtains. Everything was still. My hands, though, were covered in dirt, and under my nails, something black. And so as another morning bled into stillness, I understood that the haunting wasn't an invitation. It was ownership. If you're still here, still listening, remember, what it wants isn't to scare you. It wants to be remembered. And it's listening now, too. The morning after it spoke my name, I started noticing changes, small at first, like something inside me was adjusting its shape. My reflection no longer matched my face completely. My eyes looked sunken, my skin paler. When I blinked, sometimes my reflection didn't. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same image, a dark figure standing in the corner of my room, its head bowed low, whispering words I couldn't understand. When I woke, the words lingered like echoes, forming a rhythm in my skull. It wasn't language, it was invitation. I tried to leave again. I packed the car, slammed the trunk shut, and looked back at the house one last time. The curtains in the upstairs window shifted. I knew no wind had moved them. Still, I drove. But as the miles passed, a strange thing happened. The road refused to change. The same dead pine tree, the same cracked mailbox, over and over again, looping endlessly. After what felt like an hour, I realized I was driving in circles. When I pulled over, my hands were shaking. The sky had turned the color of ash, even though it was midday. I looked in the rearview mirror, and for the briefest moment, something sat in the back seat. Not a shape, not a person, just two eyes gleaming faintly in the dim light. Then they were gone. When I returned to the house, I didn't even remember unlocking the door. My body felt borrowed, like I was watching from far away. The air was thick again, wet, sour, alive. That night, I woke up to find dirt scattered across the floor, leading from the hallway straight to my bed. My fingernails were black with soil again. It was inside me now, not in the way possession is described in movies. No thrashing or voices, but subtle, an erosion of self. I began to forget things. My name sounded strange when others said it. Sometimes I'd catch myself standing still for long stretches, staring at the walls as if waiting for instructions. And then came the whisper. Not from the air this time, but from inside my head. It wasn't words anymore, it was emotion. Hunger, loneliness, delight. It wanted to merge, to stop being separate. The following morning, I found something that nearly broke me. In the mirror, etched faintly into the condensation, were words written in my handwriting, "You let me in." I fell to the floor, shaking. I didn't remember writing it, but I knew it was true. Every time I'd spoken to it, answered it, doubted it. Each moment had opened a door wider. Later that day, I went to the local church. The priest, a quiet man named Father Collins, listened as I told him everything. He didn't laugh or interrupt. When I finished, he only said one thing. "If it's inside you, you can't just leave the house. You have to make it leave you." He gave me a small iron cross, cold and heavy. "Keep this close," he said. "If it burns, don't run. It means it's near." That night, I kept the cross in my hand as I lay on the floor. Around midnight, the temperature dropped sharply. The walls creaked and something began moving above me. Slow, deliberate, almost crawling. I gripped the cross tighter. It stayed cool at first. Then, without warning, it turned searing hot, burning my palm. I dropped it, but the air around me pulsed like a heartbeat. A voice whispered near my ear, not gentle this time, but furious. "You can't be saved!" I tried to scream, but my throat wouldn't move. My vision blurred as shadows twisted along the ceiling, forming a shape that leaned down over me, its face inches from mine. The smell of decay and soil filled the air. Its mouth opened, and I felt a rush of cold air flood into my chest. Then everything went black. When I woke, morning light filled the room. The iron cross was lying beside me, blackened. The imprint still burned into my skin. For a moment, I thought it was over, until I saw my reflection in the glass of the window. It was smiling, but I wasn't. And so, as the hours passed and daylight stretched thin, I began to realize that this wasn't about haunting anymore. This was assimilation. It wasn't trying to scare me, it was trying to wear me. If you're still listening, keep your voice low. Don't say its name. It listens through repetition. And it's closer now than you think. There comes a moment in every haunting when fear stops being useful. Mine came 3 nights after the burning cross. I woke up with the taste of blood in my mouth and the faint hum of whispers circling my thoughts like flies. It wasn't talking to me anymore. It was talking through me. Words I didn't know, in a language that rolled like gravel. That morning, I found symbols drawn on the floorboards around my bed. Circles, lines, shapes that pulsed faintly when I looked too long. I hadn't drawn them. But my hands were stained in black soot, and the smell of sulfur clung to my skin. I washed until my fingers burned, but the smell never left. I tried everything, music, prayers, salt along the doorways. Nothing lasted more than an hour. The lights flickered no matter how many bulbs I replaced. My reflection started appearing in places it shouldn't, on switched-off screens, the dark glass of picture frames, even puddles outside after rain. Sometimes it moved a little slower, sometimes faster, as if testing which version of me it preferred. I called Father Collins again. He came just before sunset, his eyes tired but determined. The moment he stepped into the house, the wind outside stopped. He looked at me, and for a second I saw fear flicker across his face. "You've been marked," he said softly. "This isn't about a haunted place anymore. It's about ownership." We began the cleansing that night. No theatrics, no candles, just prayer, salt, and the trembling of my voice as I repeated after him. The air grew colder. My breath came in short bursts, and then the walls began to move. At first it was subtle, ripples like water running beneath paint. Then the plaster cracked open, a deep crawling sound echoing through the room. From within the gaps came a smell of wet ash and the faintest whisper, Leave him. Father Collins kept reading louder. His voice shook, but he didn't stop. The floorboards groaned, the light bulb burst, and the cross on the table snapped clean in two. My body felt like it was being pulled in every direction, bones bending under invisible hands. Then everything went silent. I opened my eyes to find Father Collins staring at me, wide-eyed and pale. "It spoke your name," he said quietly. "It knows who you are now." He left before dawn, promising to return. He never did. That day, I began hearing footsteps inside the walls, not above or below, inside. Every few minutes, they'd shuffle closer, like something pacing just beyond the plaster. Sometimes they stopped near my ear, as if waiting for me to speak. I tried shouting, I tried begging, I even tried ignoring it. Nothing worked. The footsteps only changed tempo, slow when I was calm, fast when I wasn't. It knew how I felt. It fed on it. On the fifth night, the walls began bleeding. Thin lines of black liquid oozed from the cracks, trailing down like veins. I touched it once, cold as ice, thick as oil. My skin burned for hours after. That was the night I understood. This thing didn't live in the walls. The walls were its skin. The house was its body, and I was living inside it. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The knocks, the whispers, the breathing. It wasn't a haunting. It was communication. The demon wasn't trapped in the house. I was the infection it was trying to digest. So I made a choice. If I couldn't escape it, I'd burn it. I spent the next day gathering gasoline, wood, matches. Every sound in the house followed me. The whispers grew desperate, pleading now instead of mocking. "Don't do it," it said, my own voice repeating the words back at me. "You'll never make it out." By sunset, I'd poured the last of the gasoline across the floorboards. I stood by the door, the match trembling in my hand. The house seemed to breathe. The shadows stretched long and thin, reaching for me. For the first time, I didn't flinch. I struck the match. But before I could throw it, the house spoke, not in whispers, not in mimicry. This time, it was clear, and it came from everywhere at once. "You think fire kills what lives in darkness?" The match went out on its own. And so, as the night fell once more, I understood this wasn't a battle I could fight with fire. The war wasn't around me. It was inside me now. If you're still listening, breathe slowly. What comes next isn't survival, it's surrender. Because when a demon takes everything from you, the only thing left to lose is yourself. The night I tried to burn the house was the night I understood what real helplessness feels like. Not fear. Fear still means you think you have a chance. This was different. It was the calm that comes when you realize you've already lost. The gasoline smell hung heavy in the air. I sat by the window, staring at the unlit match in my hand, watching the woods outside swallow the moonlight. For the first time since I'd arrived, there was no sound, no whispers, no breathing, not even the ticking of the clock. The silence was so pure it felt like a trick. Then the temperature dropped. Not suddenly, slowly, deliberately, like something breathing out frost. I could see my breath clouding in front of me, and in that mist, faint shapes began to stir. Faces, dozens of them, flickering in and out of sight, each one whispering something too faint to understand. The faces belonged to those who'd lived here before. I knew it without being told. Their mouths moved in rhythm, their eyes empty but pleading. And in the center of them, a darker shadow began to rise, taller, broader, almost human but stretched wrong, like its bones were arranged by mistake. I couldn't move. Every instinct begged me to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The thing stepped closer. The floor didn't creak under its weight. It absorbed the sound, swallowing everything around it. Its face was made of shifting pieces, fragments of everyone who had ever lived here, including mine. "You invited me," it said, its voice layered, hundreds of tones merging into one. "You opened every door I needed." My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught somewhere deep. "What do you want from me?" I managed to whisper. It smiled, though the movement barely resembled one. "To finish what began before you." The faces in the mist began to cry, soft. Broken sounds like wind through shattered glass. The air pressed against my chest until it hurt to breathe. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the pressure released. The demon leaned closer, its breath cold and damp. "I was never trapped here," it said. "You were." And then I saw it. the truth buried in the reflection of the window. I wasn't standing anymore. I was lying on the floor, my own eyes open, staring blankly at the ceiling. The thing in front of me wasn't outside my body. It was inside it. The moment I saw the truth, it smiled wider, and my reflection blinked while I didn't. The realization came like a blade sliding quietly into my mind. I wasn't looking at the demon anymore. I was looking out from inside it. Every memory, every thought began to blur. My voice didn't sound like mine when I spoke. "Please, let me go." It answered softly, almost lovingly. "I can't. You're what keeps me alive." Then the faces faded one by one until only mine remained in the dark glass. The body I once called mine stood up slowly, head tilting to one side as though testing its new weight. It turned, glanced toward me, and for the last time, I saw my own mouth move without command. "Thank you." The next moment, everything dissolved. The room, the walls, the cold. All that remained was the faint hum of my heartbeat slowing, fading, vanishing into something vast and endless. When I woke again, I was outside. The house stood silent, empty. The morning sun spilling across its peeling paint. The air was still, but the quiet wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of stillness that comes after something has been fed. I tried to walk, but my legs didn't feel right. My hands were pale, thinner. My reflection in the window of my car stared back and blinked a second late. That's when I realized I hadn't escaped. I had only changed places. The house had let me go because it didn't need me anymore. It had taken what it wanted. And now, I was the thing it left behind. If you're still listening, promise me one thing: don't go looking for the Miller house. Don't ask where it is. Don't search the woods north of Maine. Some doors remember the hands that open them. And when they do, they always open again. So listen quietly. Keep your lights low. And if you ever hear your name whispered softly in the dark, don't answer. Because maybe, just maybe, it's me. And so, with that final breath of memory and ruin, my story falls silent.